I am Emily, and I have an older brother named Benjamin, who is 7 years older than me. Since childhood, Benjamin displayed exceptional academic prowess, excelling from an early age. He graduated from a prestigious high school and university, and naturally, our parents were immensely proud of him. They often spoke about Benjamin's remarkable achievements. Growing up in an environment where he was expected to excel and constantly praised, Benjamin's personality underwent some changes upon graduating from university and finding a job. He decided to leave our family home, sarcastically remarking, "I can't bear such a mundane life in this house anymore." I'll never forget the wry smile on his face at that moment. Our parents, visibly surprised and somewhat saddened, recall how cheerful and cherished Benjamin used to be. Admittedly, I felt anger during that time. I didn't stand out academically or in sports, and my high school wasn't super prestigious. Still, I valued the bond and love within our family. Both Benjamin and I owed our lives to our parents' support, and I wished he felt the same. Throughout my high school years, I realized the warmth and love of a family are precious. Strangely, my brother seemed immune to that love our parents showered us with endless affection. Yet Benjamin perceived them as ordinary people. As a child, he was my hero, handling everything perfectly. He used to care, play, and help me study. However, by the time I was about to graduate high school, he started questioning the value of higher education and dismissed my pursuits. Whenever confronted, he blamed our parents, claiming he became this way because of them. I cried, but my parents reassured me, saying, "Emily, you've grown into a truly kind-hearted person." Encouraged by their kindness, I entered a national university and secured a job at my dream company. By the time I started working, my parents were almost 60, and my brother was already married. Oddly enough, neither my parents nor I had met his wife despite numerous invitations. He hesitated, citing considerations about introducing her to our family. About half a year into my new life as a working professional, an unexpected event disrupted my routine. During work hours, I received a personal call from my usually aware mother. Concerned, she inquired about my well-being and then dropped the bombshell. "Your father suddenly fell." My heart sank, and I immediately informed my supervisor, rushed to catch a taxi, and hurried to the hospital. My mother had mentioned it along the way. As I made my way to the hospital, my mind was filled with repeated hopes and prayers for my father's well-being. Upon entering the waiting room, a heart-wrenching scene unfolded. My mother, tears streaming down her face, greeted me with visible distress. "What happened, Mum?" I asked, settling beside her with a heavy heart. The morning had started like any other, and the sudden turn of events left me unable to process the unfolding situation. Words poured out of me, one after another, seeking answers. After a pause, my mother quietly uttered, "Your father has been diagnosed with cancer." The revelation hit me like a tidal wave, causing time to momentarily stand still. The shock, surprise, and anxiety within me spilled out in my voice as I questioned why. Taking a deep breath, my mother began to speak with a tone laced with sadness. "It's stage 4. The cancer has spread to the bile duct, and they said it's hard to remove it all." Her tears flowed uncontrollably, and I struggled to find words as I listened, grappling with the weight of the news. Seeking a glimmer of hope, I asked, "What treatment will be done next?" My mother nodded somberly, and after a brief pause, the attending physician entered to explain the detailed condition and treatment plan. The reality of my father's illness had surpassed expectations, with confirmed metastasis to other parts. Even if they operated, there was a significant risk, and success couldn't be guaranteed. In the heavy silence of the waiting room, my mother and I held hands, attempting to come to terms with this harsh reality. The doctor's matter-of-fact words emphasized the crucial choices ahead, continuing with chemotherapy or opting for support. In the palliative care ward, the ticking of the clock's second hand seemed to carve through the atmosphere, underscoring the gravity of the situation. Contemplating how to navigate this challenging moment, I suggested involving my brother, Benjamin, in the decision-making process. Picking up my smartphone with a forced smile, I informed my mother that I had already attempted to contact Benjamin. However, recalling his past behavior and nature, I sensed a premonition of his reluctance to face tough decisions. Despite his potential resistance, I persevered, believing in the importance of gathering the family's opinions. After numerous attempts, I finally heard my brother's slightly irritated voice urgently and anxiously. I pressed him to understand our father's condition, emphasizing the need for his presence at the hospital. His dismissive response lacked empathy, shaking me to the core. As I reminded him of our father's immense contributions to our family, tears threatened to spill. Confronting my brother's apparent indifference to our father's critical condition, I was stunned by the exchange. I found myself at a loss. Returning to my mother, a look of concern was etched on her face. "What happened?" she inquired. I replied, "It seems he is quite busy now," avoiding the details. My mother sighed deeply, murmuring, "It would have been comforting if Benjamin was here." In the following months, my father chose to spend his final moments in a palliative care ward, and after that decision, he quietly passed away. I informed my brother of the somber news over the phone, conveying the details of the wake and funeral. However, his response was cold, stating, "I'm busy with work, so I can't attend. Please proceed without me." True to his word, he didn't appear at our father's wake or funeral. Even my mother seemed shocked by this fact. She probably never imagined her son wouldn't show up for his father's funeral. Both family and acquaintances expressed their surprise and disappointment at his absence. After the funeral, when a moment of quiet settled among the family, my mother exhaled deeply, muttering to herself, "He didn't come." I took her hand and said firmly, "Mum, let's not worry about him anymore. We have to let him walk his path. For now, let's cherish our memories of Dad." In response, my mother tightly squeezed my hand and smiled, saying, "Thank you." Unbelievably, the next day, my older brother suddenly appeared at the apartment where we live. When I opened the door, his expression was different from usual, filled with urgent restlessness. Stepping inside, he demanded without any greeting, "Where is the inheritance father left behind?" Shocked by his demand, I emotionally retorted, "Seriously? Someone who didn't even show up at the funeral, and now you're saying this?" Visibly irritated, my brother snapped, "Kids should stay quiet. Hey, did you love and enjoy the story? Take a moment to like and subscribe for more." Instantly tensing the atmosphere, my mother stepped forward to calm the situation, explaining, "Apart from this apartment, your father didn't leave much behind." "There's no way that's true," retorted my brother in frustration. Barely concealing his anger and remaining calm, my mother placed my father's passbook on the table for him to see. Flipping through it, it became clear that all the savings our father had were transferred to a different account. "What is this all about?" my brother exclaimed in surprise. Gently, my mother replied, "Your father had instructed me to move all the money to my account earlier. Also, this apartment's name has been changed, and now it's in my name." Taken aback, my brother was at a loss for words. He merely clicked his tongue in frustration and left. As we watched his departing figure, we were once again filled with admiration and gratitude for our father's foresight and his plan to protect the family. A few months later, my mother suddenly fell, and she was immediately taken to the hospital. It was completely unexpected, and the family was filled with shock and concern. The diagnosis revealed that she had pneumonia, and it was in a more advanced stage than we thought. I recalled that she had been coughing slightly lately, and when she visited a small clinic, the diagnosis was a minor cold. Relieved by this news, we didn't think much of it. However, more detailed examinations at a major hospital revealed a much more severe condition, giving her only about 3 months to live. Hearing this news left me speechless, as it seemed unimaginable, especially considering how healthy she appeared. Tragically, just a few days after the 3-month mark, my mother quietly passed away, leaving a space filled with indescribable stillness and sorrow. Filled with guilt and grief, I questioned why I didn't notice sooner and why I didn't take her to a bigger hospital immediately. Even after learning about my mother's pain, there was no sign of my brother coming to our house. My aunt, my mother's sister, and I handled the arrangements for the wake and the funeral. Understandably, my brother's absence was a significant shock for my aunt, just as it had been during our father's funeral. However, expecting or saying anything to my brother felt meaningless given his past actions. A few days after the funeral, as my aunt and I were sorting out the heirloom, my brother appeared again. accompanied by his wife, whom we were meeting for the first time. He bluntly inquired about our mother's inheritance, assuming she must have left something. Shocked and dumbfounded, my aunt stared at him in disbelief. The most astonishing part was that beside my brother stood his wife, my new sister-in-law, who neither met our eyes nor greeted us. She just stood silently next to my brother. Even more shocking was that my brother didn't even visit our mother's grave. Trying to maintain calmness, I suggested, "Brother, please, at least pay your respects to our parents. Visit Mom's grave." However, he responded dismissively, "Does that even mean anything?" He quickly followed up with, "By the way, how much of Mom's inheritance is left?" At that moment, my aunt's expression changed drastically. In a voice filled with anger, contrasting with her usual warmth, she sternly admonished Benjamin. "How can you think of such things at a time like this? Emily is managing the funeral on behalf of both of you, putting in all her effort. Shouldn't you act with a bit of gratitude, thinking of your parents?" However, my brother completely ignored our aunt's anger, responding dismissively, "Auntie, it's none of your business. Don't interfere." With demands made by both my brother and sister-in-law, the atmosphere in the room became cold and tense. Behind my brother, his smiling sister-in-law remarked, "Of course, I remember your name, Emily. Do you plan to keep all of your mother's inheritance for yourself?" "Sorry, but we can't allow that. This apartment is so lovely. I think it's perfect for us." I never imagined that my brother and his wife would make such audacious demands. "Why should I have to leave for the sake of both of you?" I asked, my voice quivering. Undeterred, my sister-in-law continued, "This apartment has just been renovated, and its location is amazing. It's close to the station, and there are plenty of shops, so we'll be living here." My anger reached its peak, and I couldn't hold back. "Big brother, all you care about is the inheritance. What are you thinking?" Turning away, my brother let out a heavy sigh, remarking, "Such vulgar behaviour. Do you think raising your voice solves everything? We'll be back here in 3 days. Have everything ready to move out by then." With those words, their intentions became crystal clear. A mix of my anger and sadness bubbled up, and I couldn't stop my tears from flowing. However, this wasn't just a one-time event. Determined, I wiped my tears. My aunt gently tapped my shoulder and handed me a letter. The delicate handwriting of my mother adorned the envelope's surface. "What's this, Auntie?" I asked, carefully opening the envelope. "Your mother entrusted this to me for a just-in-case scenario. She told me to give it to you at the right moment," my aunt said, tears forming in her eyes. Unfolding the paper inside, my mother's beautiful handwriting filled the page. "To my precious Emily, if you are reading this letter, it means I'm no longer in this world. I'm truly sorry for our parting." Warmth filled my eyes, and tears began to flow. "You might have Benjamin visit the house concerning the inheritance, but don't worry. Everything that your father handed down to me is now yours." I was at a loss for words. I had no idea my mother had thought this far ahead and prepared everything in advance. "I'm sorry for suddenly leaving you alone, but I'm at peace because I've seen how much you've grown into a wonderful person. While learning is essential, it's not everything. The kindness and compassion you learn through your interactions with people are what I believe holds the most value. Your father and I were genuinely happy to see you grow up with such a warm heart until our last days. Words can't express just how proud we are of you. I truly want to express my heartfelt gratitude. Thank you." Overwhelmed, I read on, deeply moved. Mum's words before me blurred with my tears, but I was determined to take in every sentiment my mother had conveyed and continued reading. "After your father passed away, following his wishes, I secretly changed the apartment's ownership to your name. I'm sorry for using your seal without permission, but it was both your father's and my wish. Please don't be angry. Life has its ups and downs. Even when things get tough, we want you to persevere and live your life fully. So stay strong and find your happiness." The letter ended there, tears streaming down my face, wetting the paper. My aunt, standing next to me, pressed her eyes and shed tears alongside me. "Your sister truly cared about you. In her heart, you were a treasure," my aunt said gently, holding my hand. From the envelope, a bank book in my name emerged. It seemed like something my mother must have secretly made in the past. To my surprise, when I opened the bank book, a substantial amount was recorded. I felt that this was probably the inheritance from my father that my mother had saved for me. A few days later, my brother and his wife showed up at the house without even knocking on the door. They entered as if it was their own home. "It's time for you to leave, just as promised, right?" my brother sarcastically said as I stood still. My sister-in-law became irritated. "Isn't it your duty to leave quickly?" she said, almost as a command. For a moment I felt overwhelmed by the atmosphere, but I took a deep breath, looked them straight in the eyes, and said calmly, "Actually, this house is now under my name." With that statement, the room's atmosphere became tense. My brother and his wife looked at each other, exclaiming, "What? What kind of joke is this? I'm the eldest son. I should inherit the house, right?" Shaken, my brother said beside him. My sister-in-law stared at me, saying, "This is the first I've heard of this." However, I had decided to state the facts. "The house and the inheritance are all managed under my name, so there's nothing to divide," I stated firmly. My brother frowned. "Then hand over half of that inheritance to us," he demanded. But I questioned, my face turning red. "This money was left for my future and to ensure that I take care of the house. You always look down on me and now you're asking for money. What changed?" Surprisingly, my sister-in-law exclaimed, "Wait, what is this? This isn't what we were expecting." From what I gathered, my brother recently faced significant trouble at his job and was subsequently fired. Not only that, but he and his wife were moving from one day job to another, seemingly in a tight spot financially. They probably had high hopes for my mother's inheritance and the house, but with my revelation, their expectations were shattered, and they began bickering, placing blame on one another. Watching their childish dispute, I thought, what can be gained from all this? To them, I said calmly, "This is my house now. If you make any unnecessary fuss, I'll call the police." Trembling with anger, they reluctantly accepted my words and left. Since then, I've had no contact with them. I deliberately deleted all their contact details and began a new life in this apartment. This apartment is my treasure, filled with memories of my father and mother. Now, I have a loving partner by my side. We plan to build a new family in this apartment. He respects my decision and proposes that we take the first step to our new life here. Our future is bright, and I want to pass on the warm love my parents gave me to the children we will have in the future. Did you enjoy the story? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to leave a comment and subscribe for more content like this.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. "Meetings should be for employees only." Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.